Fully a do? More like fully a poo. That movie was straight booty. No, but for real, this was not good by any definition. In fact, it was a labor to finish as a viewer. I felt more tired than I do at the end of the workday. This was just unfun. It was boring and empty and hollow. Whatever little magic and intrigue was present in the first Joker movie was entirely absent from the sequel. This manifests in about 100 different ways over the course of the movie's runtime, which feels like a test of endurance considering the bare-bones plot that constitutes the narrative. But there are a few manifestations in particular that I want to hone in on. First of all, there isn't really anything that Joker 2 says or does that warrants its place in the cultural zeitgeist, both now and when we try to look back at it with any sort of historical perspective. It is entirely forgettable the instant you step out of the theater. Its commentary on isolation and society and mental illness is somehow shallower than the originals. It's even more scant than it was in the first film. Rather than a soliloquy on live television, Joker 2 opts for the other cliched method of delivering a movie's theme, which is in a courtroom hearing. Except this time, Arthur doesn't really even say anything. He doesn't actually get the cringiest line in all of human history yet again where he talks about werewolves. He just kinda whines in front of the jury without getting anywhere. The closest we get to engaging and layered conversation is between Arthur and one witness, Gary Bubbles, who offers a surprising inversion of the movie's ideas for a brief moment. But this is almost immediately plowed over with any intrigue it had the potential to explore steamrolled, so that we can continue on with the film's steadfast mission to do absolutely nothing. And by the way, it does absolutely nothing in the least interesting way possible at every single opportunity. Joker and Harley's romance, for example, is so subdued and hollow and removed from the source material that you have to wonder why it's even there. Harley, aka Lee, amounts to a bad influence for Arthur, and her role is honestly not much more significant than that of his love interest neighbor from the first film. Surprisingly, by the way, this love interest neighbor returns as a character, which I guess was pleasant. Both the character from the first film and Lee serve to enable and catalyze Arthur's delusional and dangerous behavior, doing not much more and not much less. They exist not so much as realized characters, but rather more as vessels for plot contrivance. There were moments where the film hints at and alludes to a relationship where the abuse and manipulation is more directed at Joker rather than Harley in their dynamic, which would be a genuinely interesting inversion from the source material. But because this is Joker 2, any actual exploration of and use of this idea would be far too interesting to be included in the film, so it is completely abandoned at the first possible opportunity. Oh well, at least my daydreams while I was in the theater allowed for the Harley Quinn character to be interesting and dynamic. Maybe in the next adaptation, she'll actually get the chance to do that. Also being shackled and restricted throughout the film's runtime are its musical elements. And in this case, it's so severe that I think Joker 2's existence as a musical is emblematic of all its problems as a film entirely. Joker 2 is a movie that is afraid and confused and without identity, and this is never more evident than in the moments where its characters sing to the collection of Frank Sinatra's greatest hits. Of course, they sing these sorts of songs, these Frank Sinatra jazzy classics, most likely because Todd Phillips saw that one bit of Batman Arkham Knight and he now can't shake the association of Joker and Frank Sinatra songs since he saw that. But surely we're not stemming from that much on originality, are we? Anyway, I find Joker 2's music issue to be supremely ironic. It's ironic because one of the ideas posed but never really explored in a real way in the film is the idea of Joker being a split personality from Arthur, one he explodes to in his most emotional and vulnerable moments. When he himself is no longer able to exist because of what the world and the people around him have made him feel, he snaps into the Joker. In essence, this is how the structure of musicals work, or this is how they're supposed to work. Generally, the characters explode into song and dance when their emotions are simply too extreme to be fully expressed through typical scenes and dialogue. Todd Phillips, I think, is not aware of this fact. In fact, when asked if his own film was a musical, he seemingly denied this notion. He denied this by saying his movie is not a musical because it does something that fits the literal definition of a musical. This man is operating on levels hitherto unseen as a director of a major motion picture. But, jokes and misunderstanding of film genres aside, the question of whether or not Joker 2 is a musical is a serious problem for the film, one that actively harms it for most of its runtime. To begin with, you don't even get the first musical number until what feels like a half hour into the film, and even then, this musical number is barely a musical number. The singing is subdued and reserved, and as close to talking as you can get while accompanying instruments are playing. On top of this, the song is like half inside Arthur's head, so not only is it underwhelming and not really a spectacle in any way, so it's boring for the audience, but it's also not real? And normally a musical song and dance not literally happening inside of a musical movie is fine, but there needs to be give and take there. When songs in musicals aren't actually happening within the world of the film, that's typically because there's a sense of scale and spectacle to them that necessitates this. For example, the shot sequence in Greatest Showman. If these guys took that many shots of liquor that quickly, they'd be dead. But we don't really care as an audience because it's an artistic interpretation for the sake of storytelling and entertainment. The musical number represents something beyond itself, be that a core idea of the film, or an overwhelming emotion that one of its characters is feeling, or even an extremely exaggerated representation of a plot point in the movie. You can see this in almost every absurd sequence of a song in a musical. The absurdity and unreality serves the song and the narrative. This works because we as viewers can inherently understand this over-representation. We recognize this embellishment and lean into it as an audience, because that is part of the social contract of a musical. But when we're watching something subdued and reserved and empty and boring, that's almost embarrassed to exist, and also, by the way, it's fake, we're just left confused. Was that a one-off? What did that mean for the plot? What did it mean for the characters? Is it going to happen again? If it does happen again, is it going to be that underwhelming again? And the hammer known as Todd Phillips just keeps smashing away at the same problematic nail over and over for the course of 2 excruciating hours. In fact, the most adventurous and exciting he gets with a musical number is in the courtroom when Joker is essentially hallucinating because he's emotionally overwhelmed. This was actually the clear standout number to me because it was clear and visually interesting. It was brought on by an excess of emotion, which is the core of any audience buying into a character that breaks into song. It was displaying parts of the character of Arthur that otherwise could not have been shown in any other way. Now, does this number get absolutely blown out of the water by any musical number from Mamma Mia or The Greatest Showman or Chicago or even High School Musical? Yes, it does. But that's not really fair because the people who made those things actually knew what a musical was and is meant to do. So really, I shouldn't compare them in that way. What I should do is compare Joker 2 against films that make similar commentaries and remarks on society and mental illness and how the former fails to address the latter, creating its own monsters while simultaneously blaming these monsters for being created in the first place. Joker's main goal is to address this Frankensteinian paradox of victim blaming with the protagonist who is definitively doing wrong things, yet is simultaneously a creation of the world around them. It seeks to use the backdrop of fame and press and fortune, all gained through a high-profile criminal court case, to do this. As such, it seems only fair that I compare Joker 2 to Chicago. And unfortunately for Joker 2, Joker 2 is once again completely blown out of the water. On every level, Joker 2 is just a shittier, shallower Chicago. If the first Joker was just Baby's first Taxi Driver, which it was, then the second Joker is just Baby's first Chicago. Also, there's poop on it. Joker 2 dares to ask, what if we made Chicago, but it sucked? I mean, there is literally nothing in Joker 2 that is not done 1,000 times better in a movie that came out like 22 years ago. But because I'm feeling mean, let me show you some really specific examples. Oh, let's see. The main character is arrested for murder, is slightly delusional, and seeks fame and notoriety from the attention their criminal acts have gotten. Check. But Roxy feels far more engaging than Arthur in every single scene the two are in. Oh, a fellow inmate who proves to be semi-antagonistic but also a bad influence on our protagonist? Also check. Velma Kelly is also given far more personality and agency than the little actions that are afforded to Harley over the course of Joker 2. Which is a crime, by the way, since Lady Gaga probably would have played an amazing character if she'd been given one. Oh, I know, a big bombastic musical number that twists the courtroom into an arena of public perception where the battle is in gaining sympathy and likability. Check for both, again. And once again, We Both Reach for the Gun annihilates the Joker on every single level. Legitimately, not even a competition. Oh, and to be pedantic, Chicago also blends musical numbers that actually happen with musical numbers that are imagined by the characters, and once again, it makes this distinction so much more effectively than Joker at every turn. Compare this absolute banger to whatever the hell this is.
For once in my life, I have someone who needs me.
And tell me which is superior. Actually don't, because we both know the answer. Yet again, it's Chicago. Anyway, point made enough. Joker 2 is an original. Beyond that, it doesn't even dare to be brave in its unoriginality. It's afraid to step out of any of the most basic of boxes, afraid to say something other than what was covered in the original, afraid of its own lukewarm jukebox numbers, afraid of a narrative that goes anywhere or means anything, and it's confused about what it wants to be and what it wants to say. It's dull, it's uneventful, it's uninspired. Joker 2 enters the rare company of being a movie that I am actively imagining a better version of in my head as I'm watching it for the first time, just to keep myself amused. It joins such elite films as Batman vs. Superman and Army of the Dead, the upper echelon indeed. So, in closing, what do I think? I think if you want to watch a movie that comments on the violent perversions of society, if you want to see a commentary on the public's abuse and then victimizing of the mentally unwell, if you want to see a musical where the numbers represent over-embellished explosions in our protagonist's damaged psyche, if you want to watch something with a morose ending whose uncertain finality leaves us with nagging questions about the world as a whole and its continued falling into the issues that are brought up throughout the film, if you want to watch a courtroom musical about murder and mystique and the glorification of violence, just go watch Chicago, because at least that's actually good. If you want to see a good adaptation of Harley Quinn that has unique and modern interpretations of the character, go watch the Harley Quinn TV show or Birds of Prey, because both of those are miles better than Joker 2. So I guess go see Joker 2 if you want to watch a 2-hour camera test of people smoking cigarettes. But, if you did want to go to the movies, but you don't want to completely waste your money, go see The Wild Robot, because that shit was really good. Anyway, to wrap it up, Joker 2 gets a huge, monumental, inspiring 1.5 out of 5 stars. Can't recommend you do not see this enough. There are so many better things to spend money on. So many more interesting movies to watch that accomplish the goals of this film better and while being more entertaining. Chicago, though, that's easily a 3.5 out of 5. And The Wild Robot? 4 out of 5. Boom, look at that. 3 reviews in 1 video. I'm basically back on my original weekly upload schedule. And by the way, if you disagree with me on Joker 2, please let me know. Comment your thoughts. I'm genuinely interested in hearing them. I'm usually pretty receptive to dissenting opinions. All art is subjective after all. If you like Joker 2, that's great for you. Honestly, I wish I did. I didn't though, hence this review. But be sure to flame me if you think I'm an idiot for my thoughts on the movie. I'm sure I'll keep your comments seared into my brain as I try to fall asleep at night, knowing that I'll never be quite enough. Anyway, until next time.